Dianne Feinstein and her husband, Richard Blum, have had a very, very long, decades-long relationship with the Red Chinese government. Blum has made tens of millions of dollars from that relationship. Of course, Feinstein and Blum contend that they never discuss any of it with each other, which you know is a bald-faced lie. And Dianne Feinstein has fought over and over again for policies that weaken America's security, economically and otherwise, in our dealings with Red China. Much as Elaine Chao's father has, her father has made a fortune off of shipping with the blessing of the Red Chinese government. Mitch McConnell has made very few floor speeches against Red China or Red Chinese activities since he's been involved with the Chao family. But he, too, has become extremely wealthy. I hope you will watch Life, Liberty, and Levin on Sunday at 10 p.m. I have Eastern. I have a tremendous guest, Dr. Michael Pillsbury. You're not going to want to miss this. As a matter of fact, I spoke to him today. My crew was watching as he and I were talking, and their jaws hit the floor. They couldn't even believe what they were hearing. And this man has spent his entire career on the issue of China, starting in the Nixon administration, through the Reagan administration, and so forth. And he is a director at the Hudson Institute. So I'm going to strongly encourage you. If you're going to watch any program, watch this one on Sunday. You're going to want to definitely tape it, record it, if you're not going to be around, because it's very, very important what China is doing. So Dianne Feinstein has a driver who was also a former staffer for 20 years, who is a spy for the government of China. The same China that was her husband, and the same China she fought over on the Senate floor and in committee to give them significant economic benefits in terms of full partnership and trade deals and so forth. And nobody is investigating her. Nobody's investigating her husband. These exposés have been written about them by not just conservative enterprises, but the LA Times, and even more radical news outlets than that. So Lindsey Graham, to his credit, he goes on Fox yesterday and he says, hey, look, I don't understand this. I don't understand this. Understand what? Well, let's listen. Cut 4, go.
Things that we didn't talk about. I didn't know about it until yesterday. Apparently, about 5 years ago, the FBI told Dianne Feinstein one of her employees may be an agent of the Chinese government. That was the right thing to do, and she fired them. I'm going to send a letter to Director Wray next week and ask him, what is the policy? Why didn't you tell President Trump that you had concerns about Carter Page? Is there a double standard here? If this was a counterintelligence investigation, not a criminal investigation, the FBI should have told President Trump they had concerns about Papadopoulos and Page. Why didn't they do for Trump what they did for Feinstein?
Why didn't they do for Trump what they did for Feinstein? Rather than getting a phony FISA warrant to use Page to go through the back door and surveil the Trump campaign, to have a spy in the Trump campaign, why didn't they alert the candidate about what they claim was taking place, which apparently didn't take place, of course, the way they alerted Feinstein about her driver? They didn't get a FISA warrant on the driver and the Feinstein campaign in office, did they? They didn't put an FBI spy in Feinstein's office or in her campaign, did they? Seems to me if you're going to, there's more of a reason to do it there, given her husband's close connections to the Chinese government and the fact that they've made millions. What exactly is Donald Trump's close connection to Putin? There isn't any. So it has to be manufactured through this dossier, you see. Lindsey Graham went on. Cut 5, go.
I'm saying, what the hell's going on at the FBI? Why do you tell a Democrat when they hire somebody connected to China? It could happen to anybody's office.
Right.
When the FBI finds out that somebody's working for us, may have connections to a foreign government, they should tell us, and Dianne Feinstein acted responsibly. When it comes to the Trump campaign, why didn't they tell him about Papadopoulos or Carter Page? And at the end of the day, what has Carter Page has done wrong?
Senator?
He's still walking around a free man.
Exactly, and I've been saying that from day one. From day one. So, by the way, Trump, the Treasury Department sanctions on Russia in January, in March, in April, in June, in August. Does that sound like he's selling out to the Russians? The Russian economy is a mess. The ruble is a mess. The Chinese currency has dropped 28% since Trump has put the screws to their economy. The Iranian economy is tumbling. It's completely unraveling. Does this sound like a guy who's bought and paid for by the Russians or the Chinese or... No. This is a pretty impressive record, wouldn't you say? But what of the question of Lindsey Graham? Why is it that in the case of Dianne Feinstein, the FBI alerts her that her driver's a spy of 20 years, then she fires him and everything's fine? Or why is it that Barack Obama can, and his administration, interfere in the Israeli election, spend $350,000 in our money to try and defeat Benjamin Netanyahu, and nobody's investigated, let alone charged? Why is it that Hillary Clinton can commit multiple felonies, in my opinion, under the Espionage Act, and our FBI jumps through hoops, turns itself into pretzels in order to protect her and her staff? And why is it that our FBI and our intelligence agencies unleashed the most outrageous attack on a presidential candidate in presidential election in modern American history? And yet the man under investigation is Donald Trump. These are what we call rhetorical questions. I know the answers. This is why this president needs to fight for himself, to protect himself and his family, to protect the office of the presidency from this sort of thing, to protect the Constitution, and to protect all the tens of millions of people who voted for him. Because the goal here is to disenfranchise all of us and to reverse the outcome of the last election. Well, Mike Pence would be president. He wasn't running for president. He ran for vice president. The people who voted for Trump to be president and succeeded, they have a right to have him as their president. So that's why this is so important. All the hypocrisy, all the contradictions, they all add up. That the direction, the target is Trump. Feinstein gets a pass. Hillary gets a pass. The people who interfered in our election in the United States, for the most part, get a pass. You look at this guy, Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General. When the history books are written, and I intend to write one, he should come off as the individual in this country who tried to reverse the election. And there will be questions raised about Jeff Sessions, how he can sit there on the sideline, accept the praise his Deputy Attorney General, when he knows damn well that what's going on here is utterly inappropriate. He has not recused himself from making decisions about the constitutional issues. But apparently he feels that he won't, and he shouldn't. Why? To keep the heat away from himself. I'm sorry. That's the only explanation I can see. Rosenstein was a bureaucrat. You know, they say he's a Republican. Fact of the matter, folks, is this. There are U.S. attorneys and there are U.S. attorneys. There are U.S. attorneys that have common sense, and then there are U.S. attorneys who are almost machine-like, cold-blooded. have no emotions and no feelings. Their entire career is built on putting people in prison. Maybe some of them deserve it, but it's all they know. And so when Rosenstein says to Congress or to the American people, we will not be bullied, we will not be this, that, or that, it tells you right there, the man has no sense. No ability of circumspection. No understanding of the constitutional order. None. Or he wouldn't have done this. He triggered all this. Because he's a gutless bureaucrat. And he picked somebody like Mueller, who he knew would be as he is. So when he's a Republican, there are Republicans and there are Republicans, and there are U.S. attorneys and there are U.S. attorneys. And to say that he's a Republican and he was a U.S. attorney is to say nothing. We all can see what he's doing. We can all hear what he says. Lindsey Graham is exactly right. Why did Dianne Feinstein get a pass? How come she was alerted but Trump wasn't? Because they were out to get Trump. That's his point. How come Barack Obama and his Secretary of State and his administration can interfere in a foreign election with our closest ally in the Middle East, Israel, if not our closest ally, period? And the Secretary of State give $350,000 to a group that has as its purpose the defeat of Netanyahu. And nobody's investigated, let alone prosecuted. How can it be that the greatest interference with our election didn't come from the Russians, as detestable as that government is, but came from our own government? And nobody questions Barack Obama but me. Nobody. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.